Hey guys, kinggath here with another patch for Sim Settlements 2. This is patch 2.2.4, which I'm calling Data 30. And that is a joke because my kids, when I taught them about saying a word and then 30, meaning it's time to do that, they now just repeat it about everything. It's toy 30, it's dessert 30. So now today it is data 30 because this patch adds a ton of new data and things that I think will help you guys just quality of life wise with Sim Settlements 2. I also want to point out that there are some patches for a couple of other mods, but before we get into all of that, we got to thank our patrons. You guys are amazing, and I am once again far behind on my list of shout-outs, but hopefully we'll catch up one day. It's the dream. It's actually an anti-dream, because while I would love to be able to shout all of you guys out, give you the props you deserve, the fact that I can't keep up means that more and more people keep supporting the project, which is just wild. So huge shout out and thanks to Malcolm McCringe, Jason Lockrantz, Landstorm, Johnny, Shane Beal, Woodcock, and Oscar N1N71. You guys are giving me too many easy names lately. We need some more people with crazy unpronounceable names for me so that I can botch them up. All right, let's get into the patch notes. So before we start showing you, before I start showing you the SS2 major features, let's talk about the other mods that are updated today. So we've got obviously a workshop framework update that pretty much goes hand in hand. If you get an SS2 update, there's a workshop framework update as well. But we also updated two other mods that I haven't updated in quite a while. So first one is the Wasteland Reconstruction Kit. Choo Choo has been working hard on adding some new content to that. And again, just like all of the other entries in Wasteland Reconstruction Kit, they only require Sim Settlements 2, so they're great for using in city plans. So go check out Wasteland Reconstruction Kit's update if you want some new buildable items. In particular, went after a bunch of Nuka World things and made them buildable. And then we've got an update to Workshop Plus. Now this is just a small update to fix a couple of bugs. The biggest two changes that I will bring up is one is that the undo redo feature is now disabled by default. You can re-enable it in the settings, and that is because we found some power grid issues that can be caused by it, and so we wanted to make sure it was disabled by default. So if you like the undo redo feature and you're starting a fresh playthrough with Workshop Plus, know that you'll have to re-enable that. The second is that I attempted, and I'm about to test right now to see if it worked, to make it so that getting flight mode would be a little more, reliable. So I know many of you guys are used to half the time you go into workshop mode, it doesn't trigger flight mode, and I think I figured out what the issue was. We had a detection in Workshop Plus to test and make sure you were in workshop mode, but there's no actual reliable way to do that, unfortunately. So we had to rely on a second script running to check if you were in workshop mode, and again, that can be delayed. So now the consequence of making this more reliable, of going into flight mode in Workshop Plus, is that occasionally you'll find that you will end up in it after you exit workshop mode. So to combat that, you just go in and out again. So if you don't like any of that and you find the flight to be a pain, you can just turn it off. That's an option in Workshop Plus. So Wasteland Reconstruction Kit and Workshop Plus also got updates today, so go check those out. All right, now let's get into the meat of today's content, which is Sim Settlements 2 stuff. So there's two big things that I approached with this patch, the biggest of which came off of a poll I put on the community section of my YouTube section recently, which is that you guys wanted to see more reports in Sim Settlements 2, so you have access to more data. So let's start with those. So I've only added 2 reports so far, and I've got 2 more planned, and that's because these turn out take many, many hours to implement, to get all the data syncing up correctly, to calculate it all, and then to build out these terminal entries is kind of difficult. So I'm going to put a couple more on the back burner. They'll probably show up in the next patch or two. But the first 2 we've got, I will show you, and those are the needs report and the plot report. Now I did these reports a little different than most mods do their reports. So what happens is when you activate them, it's going to generate all of the data that you could need all at once, and it'll take a few seconds. If I click on needs report here, it's going to take a moment while it generates all the data. It actually goes much quicker now. I probably did some of the optimizations I did before I filmed this video worked better than I expected. And now you'll be able to cycle through all the other pages very, very quickly. So basically what this is going to do is lay out information about the various resources that make up the meters on the left-hand side of your screen in Sim Settlements 2. So you're used to those different meters, and now there's one of these that corresponds to most of them. A few of them we combined into the population. So let's go over each of these real quick. So the first one up there is food. The food, water, power, and defense should be pretty straightforward. They're going to show you the number you see in your workshop HUD at the top at the very first entry. So if we exited out, went to workshop mode, we'd see that 113 matches to our food. And now it's telling you where that stuff is going. So the first is produced. So that is how much this current settlement is actually creating. The next is how much food that the settlers actually need in that settlement. And then the imported line is how much you're getting from the caravan services network to make up that difference. The same would be the case for exported if you were producing more than you needed and other settlements were borrowing from that settlement. And then surplus means not only are you producing more than you need, but also more than the entire caravan network needs. And that line is particularly of use for players who are getting into HQ content, because the surplus is the only stuff that the HQ can use. And we've also combined there on each of these, on the water, power, defense, and food, you have the network produced, needed, and surplus, which will help you get an idea of where you should focus if you're looking to generate some more resources from a settlement. Say you have an extra settler and you're looking for something for them to do, and you want to figure out how much total surplus you have available for HQ. You could come quickly in this report and see that like I have 26 surplus available, so HQ could use some more, so it would be a good thing to build some more farms. And you have the same information available for water and for power. And then for defense, we have it there, but obviously there is no network sharing for defense currently. This also has the addition of a chance of raid calculation, and that is based on the code that is in the base workshop system. And so if you have a mod that alters that, this will not take that into account. Now, if people know of some of those types of mods and there's an easy way for me to add to that calculation, I can look into doing so, but for now we're just using the vanilla formulas. And the same comes up in the happiness situation. So we actually have some calculations here done based on the default formulas. So for happiness, when you go here, the bonuses are done in a raw format, so it's converted to the actual impact the happiness is having. So we're actually getting plus 17 to happiness from various bonuses, and that is just added straight to the happiness score. So that is most likely coming from plots adding benefits. So recreational plots are most likely the cause of that, whereas the actual rating score for happiness bonus is stored in a bigger number that's divided by the number of settlers. So we tried to make these reports as friendly as possible to new users or people who aren't super familiar with the under the hood mechanics. So if you have any mods that are altering happiness formula in some way, those aren't going to be taken into account. So for cleanliness, we also have the outbreak chance. So you can see our current cleanliness rating here is 0, which means we have a 100% chance of outbreak. So if our settlement gets targeted as a roll for a new outbreak, we're going to get hit, and there's going to be some new diseases here. And then you can see how the cleanliness score is reported. It's a mix of hygiene and pollution. So we've got 105 pollution coming from settlers, 27 from our from our power plants, most likely from our plots, and 2 points coming from people who already have diseases. So the diseases can kind of compound if you didn't know that about the mechanics. And the hygiene comes from sanitation plots or from level 3 single person residential. So there is a small advantage to having the single person versus the multi, as they will help keep your pollution score down if you've got the single person. So the cleanliness rating, there's more information here. And then lastly, the population. This is going to cover those last 3 meters on the left, which show you how many people are employed, housed, and have recreational assignments. So you can see that information here at a glance. It also adds a unique field you probably won't get in other reports, is the chance of recruitment. So if you are below your max population, it'll show the likelihood of recruitment based on the formulas that the vanilla game uses to determine if you should get a new settler each day. So again, won't take into account any mod alterations to that formula, but this should give you at least base information for most of you. So the pretty detailed report, a lot of information. I tried to lean toward things that I thought would be universally useful to know, and that wouldn't get into too nitty-gritty of information where it might overwhelm folks who find this report. There is room for adding more detailed reports in the future. I might do that into an advanced section. If you guys have ideas for more particular detailed data points on that, feel free to comment below with ideas you have for more details on either of these reports. One other thing I forgot to mention at the top about these reports is that they are not available in the Pip-Boy. That is just due to technical limitations. So you will only find these at the City Planner's Desk terminals. So be sure to check there if you're looking for these reports. All right, next we've got the plot report. This one is also generated in the same way. It generates all the data up front so that you can quickly then dig in and find more information information. Now, initially, I was going to do what I thought was the obvious, which is to let you dig into by report or by plot type and see how many you have of each size and of each level and everything, but I realized that that's not really useful information. It doesn't actually matter that much, and you can quickly find that out by just kind of flying up in the air and taking a look at your settlement. So what I thought was more information would be to see an aggregate of all of the resources being provided or used by a particular group of plots, and so that's the way I've approached this. So the plot report shows you the 7 plot types. It will only show you the types you've unlocked, so if you're on a new save, you might find that some of these are missing. And then if you activate one of these, you'll then get a breakdown report about that particular plot type. You're going to see how much water, power, and defense it's using, any pollution being created, how much of the resources that it's producing. Now, I will say that under the industrial category, we are not showing the scrap breakdowns because that would not fit in this report style. And that is one of the reports I'm going to add in a future update. I want to add a detailed production report. The other piece of data we don't have here, which will also come in its own report in the future, is an operating costs breakdown. So those of you guys who play with the operating maintenance costs, we'll have a separate report for that in the future. So this is going to be kind of the high level view of things. Again, these are the simple reports that I think most people will find interesting and useful. And then the more complicated stuff we'll put in an advanced section, probably in the next patch or maybe the one after that. So here you can see our agricultural plots. We've got 3 of them. They're producing a total of 89 food. We can see how many workers are using them. And you can see on this one, we have 6 out of 7. So there's actually 1 available work slot in one of our agricultural plots. You can see that we're creating 21 water needs to the settlement. We're using 3 power, and we're adding defense requirements to the settlement. So the defense requirements for agricultural just are a straight 1-to-1 for food production. Some of the other plot types have a different formula for their defense, and you'll be able to figure that out by looking at these. Now, in addition to showing this by the plot type, we also have it broken down by class. So if you want to figure out which of your subclasses are using more resources, how much they're roughly producing as a whole, you can figure that out as well. And then this total agricultural plots will bring you back to this first screen that you're looking at. So if we go to basic farms, we'll see that we have the same information but broken down by basics. So we can see out of the 89, 54 of it's being produced from our basic farms. We've got 5 out of 6 slots for this subclass are filled with workers using 15 water and 54 defense. And so you can do the same for advanced. And you can see this all loads very quickly because all of the data is calculated at the start when you first click on plot report. So that way jumping between these pages becomes very snappy, which was something that I figured out how to do for these reports. And part of the reason it took so long because I think it makes these much more user friendly. But just be aware if you get that front data little hiccup, that's by design. Okay, and so we can do the same thing for the other plot types. Now, like I said, in industrial, you're not going to see the individual scrap production, but we did find one of the common pieces of data we could show there is the junk storage. So we were able to put that. I'm going to point out another little oddity here, and that is Marshall plots. You're going to see reference to something called supply storage. That is something that is coming as part of the 3.0 update, and I didn't want to add more to-do items for my Chapter 3 coding, so I just put it in advance, knowing that it'll automatically kick in once Chapter 3 releases. So yes, that's supposed to be 0, and it is something new that's coming. You'll also likely see, so in my case, I have the Chapter 3 alpha installed right now because I was testing something before recording this video, so you're going to see these new classes coming in. They're no secret. They're classes that were in the Conqueror expansion, so you guys should not see these. These classes should only show up if you have them unlocked. And that is another point to mention about this plot report in general. If you're using city plans that bypass some of the locks of the different class types, those classes you have built here will not show up as sub-reports. You have to have the class unlocked before it will show up as a report, but they will still be counted in the aggregate scoring. So for example, you know, we have, if we had like a high-tech power plant unlocked from a city plan, but we didn't actually have the class unlocked yet, it would still be included in this total report in all these numbers here, but it just would not have its own sub-report available yet. That, again, is by design, mostly because of technical limitations. To actually detect whether or not you had them unlocked was a lot simpler to do from a implementation perspective. And so if we find a better way to do that in the future, we may change that. But just note that if you don't see a subclass breakdown available as an option in here, that is because you haven't actually activated that class. You haven't unlocked that class yet yourself. So for municipal, we do show a few more data points here. We've got power and water generated because of there are power and water plants available for municipal, and then hygiene provided. Again, hygiene being the score that counteracts pollution to get to your cleanliness rating, if you're not familiar with what that is. So you can kind of add together hygiene and pollution, and that nets out to be your cleanliness score. So there is a lot of information available here. Hopefully that will give you guys some bigger picture idea of what's going on in your settlements and help you make better decisions if you're into it. Now, obviously, these are basically just the same information that is used to create the HUD data on the left there. So it's not something I anticipate everybody needs on the reports, but sometimes you're just curious. Like, for example, in my particular settlement here, you can see I'm a little short on defense, and since my defense numbers are so high, I'm not actually sure how much I should build. How many turrets does that represent, or should I build a new martial plot? And that's where that report can come in handy when you're in these situations where resources are tight, or your people are tight, the available people are limited, and you're trying to decide what you should build next. You might use the report to get some specific numbers. It kind of exposes the numbers under the hood that create the HUD data on the left, which is otherwise simplified down to that simple, the meter is full or not. So if you're looking for those numbers, you now have access to them. Okay, so the next thing that we'll discuss, this came up on that poll recently as well, and that is doing some things to smooth out the disease mechanics. I know a lot of folks find them to be a little bit overwhelming early on, so we made a few changes that I think will help with that. Now, there's still more I want to do to smooth that out and to make it more of a gated system to where the mechanics kind of unlock alongside the solutions. But in the meantime, I came up with some band-aid solutions I was able to implement relatively quickly without needing to write any new quest content or reconfigure any of existing quests. So I've got 3 changes worth talking about. So the first thing is that I moved chickenpox to a tier 2 disease. Now that might not seem like much of a change, but basically the way we have the disease system set up is you will never see anything beyond a tier 1 disease until after your settlement has gone through the tier 1 diseases. So there are 6 or 7 tier 1 diseases, and one of them used to be chickenpox, and chickenpox was the only one that was not curable by default by the disease cures that you could purchase. So now all of the level 1 diseases, the ones that you'll see in the early game, can be cured by the disease cure system. So that should smooth out some of that. For those of you guys who rolled the chickenpox disease, you were kind of stuck with it for 10 or 12 days in game before them to naturally pass it, and now that won't occur anymore until level 2 diseases start kicking in, which will be a little bit later in your game. For those of you guys who are not super familiar with the disease system, you can eventually, when you get to HQ, start researching every single disease and develop cures for all of them. But the level 1 diseases, which are basically the worms, so things like radworms and bloodworms and things, those are all available to be cured immediately without you needing to do any research. So speaking of disease cures, they are now craftable, and I think this is going to be very helpful for those of you guys who really like to keep it under control. Now, I will say one of the things that has come up multiple times in discussion about the disease system is whether the disease cures were a good idea, because they offer a solution, but they also make you guys feel like you have to deal with it. And I just want to say, you do not have to deal with diseases. They will pass eventually. It's meant to be a immersive feature. It's something where you can kind of min-max if you really want to keep everybody on top of things, but you can disable the disease system. You can disable the incapacitation part of diseases, and the incapacitation system is what really will knock you down later, but that doesn't kick in until level 3 diseases, so it takes a while for it to kick in. And incapacitation means that settlers can't work, so then their benefits from their plots don't kick in. But if you're not playing with incapacitation, the hits to production from diseases are incredibly minor, and so you don't have to do this. But for people who enjoy running around giving out cures and want to make that part of their loop, like I actually find it kind of enjoyable to watch them do the little injection animation and find the folks that need it. So we've got those craftable now, so you don't necessarily have to go find people who have them for sale. And you can find those under the healing subcategory of cooking. Now, the reason we put them under cooking is because you'll see from the ingredients they are all using various crops. Now, these crops were very particularly chosen because they are the crops that are not used by adhesive. So for those of you guys who like to adhesive farm, this will not interfere with that. This will give you a use for some of those other generic crops, and it will give agricultural another use besides just generating food. So I thought this kind of also solved a secondary gameplay issue of that agricultural types, the other classes of food were not particularly useful. The making vegetable starch was just too useful. So now mass producing disease cures could be another source of I guess it could generate revenue. You could sell those, but also of just gameplay there. So if you want to start coordinating your farms a little better and getting all the different resources created, you'd now have a benefit to do so for disease cures. So the last change we made with diseases is that we've added them to the tracking tools. So whether you have the City Manager Tools object here or the Vitamatic tracking tool that you've created, you can use that under the Vitamatic tracking menu, and you'll see that there's now a sick and incapacitated tracking options so that you can quickly identify and find the people who need you to bring them disease cures. So that was added to that system. If you've never seen that system, it is unlocked during Chapter 1's main storyline. You'll see that after you get the Vitamatic, you should get a pop-up shortly after that about unlocking tracking tools, and that will let you track down settlers of various states, and it puts a little map marker on them so that you can go chase them down and do whatever's needed to get them moving. Okay, so that covers the bulk of the big patch note things I wanted to talk about and show you guys. There's obviously a lot of other patch stuff, so go check out the notes. There should be some other very useful and interesting stuff. It also details the new stuff that's added to the Wasteland Reconstruction Kit for users who are using that. And then Workshop Framework, there are patch notes available for that as well. I will have those linked down below. You can find those on the Workshop Framework Git. Okay, guys, now comes the point where we give away some merch. So if you are interested and you stuck around this long in getting some Sim Settlements 2 merch, I need you to leave a comment below with a particular hashtag and include with that something interesting to read for me. So whether it be something you love about the mod, something you hate about it, maybe you got a bug report you don't think I'm aware of, or a funny story you want to tell me, whatever, just include something with your comment and the hashtag. And also, very important, you include contact information. For those of you guys who, if I don't have contact information, I don't put you down in the drawing, because it's often difficult for me to figure out what your YouTube name is versus your forum name or whatever. Your contact information can be a Twitter handle, it can be your Nexus Mods username, simsettlements.com forum username is the best for me, but any of those will work. Just put something so I can contact you if I draw your name. All right, so the hashtag for the day is going to be #MoreData. So include that below, and I will do a drawing in the next couple of days and give one of you guys some money to spend on our merch store. All right, guys, take care and enjoy the mods.